does having this criminal record now do for Donald Trump with these other 3 criminal cases?
Oh, well, so that's an interesting question. There's a lot of speculation about whether or not this criminal conviction will result in a incarcerative period for Donald Trump. That's up in the air. There are arguments in favor, there are arguments against. But whatever happens, the fact of this criminal conviction will be on his record if it remains at such time as the future criminal trials take place. And if he gets a conviction on the federal counts in the future, the fact of this conviction here, if it's still on the books, would result in a potential higher prison sentence in those future cases. So it does have a consequence because he will now, unlike a week ago, have a criminal record, and criminal records are taken into account in meting out punishment.
Important point. You said you had promoted the president's attorney when you used to work together. Would you promote him based on his performance in court defending Mr. Trump?
It's a very easy thing that I do and other people do on the panel and criticize people's performances. Sometimes it's the case that someone could do a better job at trial. Trials are difficult and there's a lot of scrutiny here. But sometimes the facts and the law are what the facts and the law are. And sometimes terrific defense lawyers who perform very, very well lose. And sometimes not good defense lawyers win because the government hasn't proven its case. So I'm not going to take pot shots at Todd. I think he could have been stronger in some of the cross-examinations, and I'll leave it at that.
Well, sentencing is July 11th, 4 days before the convention, as we mentioned. What grounds for appeal do you think Mr. Trump has here?
So I think they'll make a number of points. Donald Trump is not one to leave anything on the cutting room floor. I think some of his arguments are non-frivolous. I agree with what Jan said, that in the ordinary course, it's very, very difficult to get a criminal conviction overturned, but it happens. It's happened to me. It's happened to any good prosecutor's office that brings aggressive cases. Nobody has a 100% record on appeal. That said, it's a very low percentage. I think a number of things, including that the fact that the judge didn't change the venue, the fact that the judge didn't recuse himself, I don't think those are strong, but I think those will be made. The fact that Stormy Daniels testified a bit broadly about some of the scurrilous details of their sexual encounter, they will argue were prejudicial and should not have been allowed to come in, although they opened the door to that, arguably. And then there's this sort of technical business that I'm sure causes lay people's eyes to glaze over, and that is the degree to which the second crime, the thing that made and transformed the misdemeanor into a felony, the basis of that did not have to be decided unanimously by the jury. So the further crime, the felony, was appropriate based on the jury's decision if there was the falsification of the business documents was done to further or to conceal or to commit some other crime, namely an election crime in New York, and that could have been done 3 different ways for the jury instructions, and they don't have to be unanimous on those 3 different ways, and that's probably an issue for appeal.
Let me zero in on that because that has been something that Mr. Trump and his allies have talked about. In terms of this case, this was about trying to manipulate an election and fraud related to that. His allies say this was just, it was a paperwork thing. Somebody mislabeled this as a legal expense. How would you tell a layperson to understand this?
Yeah, look, the underlying misdemeanor, and that's why it's a misdemeanor, is falsifying business records. But the reason it becomes a felony, not the most serious felony on the books in New York, but a felony, and any felony is serious, is if that crime, that misdemeanor crime, was done to conceal or commit some other crime, and that other crime that the prosecutors alleged and got the convictions on was promoting someone's election by unlawful means, either done by the falsification of other documents or committing some other tax crime, or a further election fraud crime. And so the prosecution, I think, did it as well as anybody could do for lay people, because the jury obviously was a series of lay people, that this was a serious thing that undermined and interfered with the election in 2016. And that's serious and not to be taken lightly.
So, we're seeing some rhetoric